Shalom, all praises to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Harakah Kadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of the great millstone rule well. And Shalom to the brothers and doing the work of sincerity and truth. Just got this article on this new, legislation that's getting pushed through. Where it's basically, aimed at Amalek, and really it's essentially tied up in the back and forth between the state of Israel and the Palestinians, that conflict. There's been like a big wave of protests in like universities or colleges, I guess they're called in America, which resulted in just big tussles with security, it getting violent. So there's been legislation pushed through, essentially limiting, how you can discuss these issues. That's what they're looking to do, and it's obviously being pushed through as being seen as they're doing a good thing, because really since like the end of World War II, Amalek's been the biggest, the most ultimate victim basically. So in general, it's kind of like they've been the most protected class. But that's something that now, with this conflict, what is being done over there, you got a lot of pushback against it. But then now they're kind of, this is likely going to use, people who might have said certain things, might have discussed. We'll go into it. So it's on Substack. Lee Feng, Substack says wave of legislation seeks to penalize criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism. Says federal and state laws' new definition of anti-Semitism includes subjective actions like holding Israel to a double standard not applied to other nations, whatever that means. The House of Representatives on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly to advance a bill that would empower the federal government to crack down on student protests by defining anti-Semitism in a way that includes certain criticism of Israel. So it's they're already obviously a protected class, but then this is gonna push it further and then tie legal punishments to it as well, because we'll say sponsored by Representative Mike Lawler, a Republican from New York. The bill's passage reflects a broader national trend. Earlier this year, Governor Brian Kemp signed HB 30, which revised Georgia's hate crime statute to include certain forms of speech critical of Israel. In March, Governor Kristi Noem signed legislation in South Dakota civil rights statute that codified some forms of speech critical of Israel as a form of illegal discrimination. Nearly identical hate crime legislation passed the South Carolina legislature last week and now awaits signature by Governor Henry McMaster. Florida legislators are rapidly advancing a similar bill that provides enhanced criminal penalties, including extended prison time for hate crimes involving some forms of speech related to Israel. So yeah, it's already being pushed through on a state level in the US anyway. Over here in the UK, it's already these things already been illegal. There was in Scotland, you had like a new hate crime bill passed, which made it even more intense. But then it's like over here in the UK, so we already have like Section 4A of the Public Order Act, where if you cause distress and alarm already, then that's something you can be. You can get prison time, you can get fined, you can get arrested. Depending on the scale of it. And that's yeah, that's the as well, now it's coming to the US, where so-called free speech has been, is meant to have been like the cornerstone of the nation, but obviously it's being shown there ain't, you know ain't gonna be as free or stay as free, because it includes what in New York, state legislators proposed legislation that would make it a Class A misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in prison, to vandalize any banner, poster, flyer, or billboard that supports the country or citizens of Israel in any way. Which is kind of wild, because to vandalize. So if you ripped off a poster, so what if someone, yeah. But that's that broadening of like legal powers. That's something, in a time of crisis. Now it's obviously a heightened situation over there, to where people feel World War III is on the cusp. One, because it is, according to prophecy, and then on the other side there's a conflict which people are feeling a certain way about. People are getting roused up. So, given that situation, legal measures are being passed, and that's kind of how these situations always work out. Like the big one to go to is the pandemic. You go to the pandemic, especially in the UK. There's a bunch of powers passed that that have, they still there. They've not been rescinded. The ones I remember, there was the escalation of over here. We had the escalation of protesters, where they'll gluing themselves to buildings, to roads, to different things, chaining themselves to things. They passed further powers for the police to kind of grab them up out of that, and now those powers are just there, and then they can build more off it over time, to where and then it just becomes normal. Because like Section 4 of the Public Order Act, you used to be able to go out and say certain things, but it's like now, you say certain things, it's distress and alarm. So it's literally, you could just be talking in an elevated tone, and that causes someone distress or alarm. Then the police will come over, like, sorry mate, can you move on please? No, sorry, we've received a complaint. She was she was quite upset, blah blah blah. Like, and then they're gonna what do you call it? They're gonna be looking at like, well, they're holding you to account for it. And you can't do shit. If you say no, you're gonna stand your ground. Push comes, these guys can just grab you up and throw you in the cell overnight. And then these are the powers that would come, and now it's being looked at for these protesters. But then once it's through, then it can be applied in any way. It might even be applicable in like I said, vandalize a banner, poster, or flyer. A fucking flyer. So you could get handed a flyer by someone, and then rip it in half, and then you're liable under this law, which is why that's why it's wild. Once they're through, that shit can be used any which way, which is peak. So it says the law legislation differs from the state legislation in that it deals primarily with higher education. If the federal government finds that university has allowed the definition of anti-Semitism to go unchecked, the US government can deprive the university of federal funding, or even press charges for alleged civil rights violations. By contrast, the state laws and legislations, including what's proposed in New York and enacted in Georgia, directly expand the scope of behavior subject to criminal prosecution and enhance sentences for existing violations. For example, an act of alleged anti-Israel vandalism would now be subject to a harsher penalty. At the heart of it all is a desire to equate harsh Israel criticism and anti-Zionism, opposition to the idea of Israel as a Jewish rather than secular, multi-ethnic or Arab state, with anti-Semitism. Yes, it's basically the way yeah, they kind of broaden the definition of essentially saying like it's, you know, criticism of what the country's doing. The way now, you know, people talk about China, people talk about Russia, you know, you're not able to do that. They're a special case, which is, you know, it's wild. But then these, you know, these things are gonna get through because and that's, you know, this system, that's what it's created for. It's created to keep those in charge, those in power, those who hold sway, you know, to allow them to build their influence. It's like, you know, people are talking about, oh, the elections, blah blah blah. Everyone's all invested. That shit's moving like Game of Thrones. It's like what the fuck would it be? No, there's Game of Thrones. There's like Love Island. It's like Love Island. It's like a Big Brother. It's one of those celebrity shows where, you know, everyone votes and then, you know, people are anticipating this drama going down. Like you got the Donald Trump court case going on at the minute with like Stormy Daniels. That's, you know, these things are keeping people's attention, keeping people's focus and whatnot. But then, you know, these meanwhile these laws are getting passed and people aren't realizing like this is peak. Because the thing with this as well is then like you know, if you put videos up, just coming to the videos, it's like you put, you know, put videos up, you do certain things just in public in general, then you can, you know, you can be grabbed up and thrown in jail for that, which is peak. But, you know, people don't pay attention. They don't, you know, they don't look into these things. This ain't as entertaining as whatever Stormy Daniels is saying at the trial. So it's funny because you can kind of see the, you know, the jail bars like slamming down around people within the system, to where, you know, down the line it's gonna be like, yo, hold on, how did shit switch up? Which is kind of what, you know, what happened with the UK, where people thought there was free. People still think there's freedom of speech, but that shit ain't existed for a hot minute. Let me get this. Isaiah 29:16. It says, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he had no understanding? And yeah, you know, everything's being turned upside down. Because it's now, you know, despite whatever their men are doing over there, you know, the state of Israel, whatever their military is doing, whatever, you know, whatever's happening to the people over there, for you to criticize, you know, in the US, over here anyway, it's limited what you can say. Because yeah, it's especially publicly, it's like that distress and alarm. People might, the thing is people might be saying what they're saying on social media, kind of able to get away with it. As soon as a spotlight gets shone on you, then they can, you know, they can come grab you up and throw you in jail. That's how it is over here already. So they're really trying to push that through over on their sides, over in the States. So, you know, everything's been flipped on its head to where it's like, you know, now you see, because you've had, you know, previously you would have had, you know, the situation being reported on by news, what are they called, not news stations and whatnot. You know, they'll send some guy over there, they'll fly some fucker over there, and then he'll be out there in the press, like the little blue press bulletproof top with a helmet on, you know, and there's explosions in the background. He's like, yes, I'm 20 miles, I'm 2 miles out from blah blah blah, and we've just, you know, there've been strikes all night, and you know, that's how it used to run. Now all these things, you're basically seeing everything in living color, because everyone's got a smartphone, everyone's got, you know, there's it's way easier to get all these you know, footage of what's going down, information flowing, you know, minutes, seconds after things happen. So that's something that, you know, the discussion, the mindset, that's something that needs to be, you know, controlled. And, you know, these laws make those things easier, restricting what people can say. And on social media anyway, it's already been limited and restricted in what, you know, what can be said or what can't be said, these things. Because why? Amos 8 and 11. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, saith the Most High Power, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor of thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord Yahweh. And yeah, that's where it's going to get to where we're not going to be able to the truth ain't going to be able to go out on, through the internet, on the street, wherever. There'll be a point in time where it won't be found. People are going to be going out, they're going to, it's going to be on top. It's funny because there's men there's a guy I saw, like we like before a couple brothers from the camp, we spoke to this guy, we told him about the truth like multiple times before, and it's like I saw him for the first time in a while, and it was like way back, he's hearing it to a certain extent, but then afterwards, his things in his career and whatnot started going well, and then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, he wasn't hearing it for a little bit, but then as I saw the guy, and it was like, yeah, now it's like, he asked me, oh, you still doing that? I said, yeah, we still do it. Told him where we were and whatnot, and then he was asking, he was saying like, yeah, just the way way everything's looking, it's like, yeah, it's looking like it's shit's gonna be on top soon, man. It's kind of getting fucked for everyone, and that's more the mindset for those with paying a little attention, especially for those that heard the truth before. They can kind of see like, yo, everything's switched up, everything's changed up. This ain't running how it used to run, which is why these like people are now looking at it like, damn, this is peak. This is a mess. It's a fucking mess, man. And then what? But there'll be a point in time where they might go to where we bumped into. They might go to where we're holding camp and try and look for us. But then it won't be there, man. They're gonna have to make do with what whatever they've built up before that point. Because why? There's it's only running up until a certain point, and it's legislation that's helping bring that in. Because end on this, Psalms 94 and 20, it says, shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? And yeah, framing mischief by a law. That's how Esau's system gets down. That's the same thing, you go back to Rome, we're in the rebirth of Rome now, in the prior Rome. They used those draconian laws to basically establish their rule, and that's something that now is becoming clearer and clearer. This legislation's been passed. It's like in the UK, they tried to get like national ID cards over here like countless times, and there's been but then there was huge resistance to it. But then what for something like track and trace, where it's basically tracking what you call it, tracking where people go. When you go out, you want to go anywhere, you basically have to check in. That managed to get through because why? People wanted to be able to go out, and it was that point of crisis, man. That hardship. That's kind of where these things can happen. You use a crisis, you put some legislation through, and then that lets them, play with what they're doing. And that's something we see, we've seen it happen, and now it's happening again, and it will continue. And then, like I said, it'll get to the point where Amos 8 and 11 is going to be fulfilled, man. And then, that time of Jacob's trouble, World War III in full swing, and then all kinds of hell, then deliverance afterwards. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Shalom. Shalom. Shalom.